The scissors weren't supposed to be part of the costume. They were supposed to trim loose ribbon, snip stray threads, cut price tags. Instead, they stopped inches from my daughter's braid. 25 parents stood in the rehearsal hall, chatting over coffee. Music floated through the speakers. Little girls stretched in sparkling costumes. Nobody noticed when my sister-in-law smiled and said, "Stand still, sweetheart." Emma smiled back. She trusted her aunt. That trust lasted exactly 3 seconds. Snip. The sound was so soft. Almost nobody heard it. But every parent in the hallway turned around when my daughter screamed. By the time I reached the dressing area, a thick braid lay on the floor. Still tied with the white satin ribbon Emma had picked out herself, my 8-year-old stood frozen. One side of her beautiful chestnut hair hung below her shoulders, the other had been hacked off above her ear. Jagged. Crooked. Uneven. She wasn't crying because of the hair, she was crying because everyone else was staring. Children don't mind getting hurt. They mind becoming a spectacle. My name is Olivia Bennett. I was 36 years old. I illustrated children's books. Every day I drew brave little girls who rescued kingdoms, sailed oceans, and defeated dragons. Then I went home and watched grown adults bully my own daughter. Emma had dreamed about this recital for almost a year. She'd earned the opening solo after months of practice. Not because she was the best dancer, because she smiled every time the music started. Her teacher once told me, "Some children perform steps. Emma performs joy." That's why the audience loved her, not her hair, not her costume. Her heart. Unfortunately, jealous adults rarely attack what actually makes a child special. They attack whatever seems easiest to reach. My husband's sister, Courtney Hale, had spent weeks complaining. "My Lily deserved that solo." The judges clearly have favorites. Then the complaints became stranger. They only picked Emma because she looks like a little princess. Every conversation returned to Emma's long hair, her curls, her ribbons, her photographs at one family barbecue. Courtney actually asked, "Has Emma ever thought about cutting it short?" Emma hugged her braid protectively. "I love my hair," Courtney smiled. "We'll see." At the time, everyone laughed, including my husband, Ryan Bennett. "That's just Courtney." 4 words, he'd been using them to excuse his sister for 11 years. The dance academy allowed one parent volunteer backstage. Courtney signed up before anyone else. She claimed she wanted to help with costumes. The instructor thanked her. I thanked her too. That mistake would follow me for a long time. When I finally reached dressing room 4, Courtney was calmly sweeping hair into a dustpan, not hiding it, cleaning it up like she'd spilled glitter. Ryan stood beside her holding 2 juice boxes. He looked irritated, not shocked, not angry, just annoyed I'd arrived so quickly. "What happened?" I asked. Courtney laughed. "Oh, we were playing salon." Emma looked at me desperately. I said no. My heart stopped. Courtney rolled her eyes. "Children say no to everything." Then she reached into the trash can, pulled out the braid, and dangled it between 2 fingers. Besides, she smiled toward her own daughter. Now Lily finally won't have to stand next to the prettier little girl. The room became completely silent. Every dance teacher, every parent, every child, nobody knew what to say. I looked at Ryan waiting. Just waiting for him to tell his sister she'd crossed a line. Instead he sighed. "It's only hair, Olivia. It'll grow back." Then he smiled at Emma. "You'll still dance." Emma slowly shook her head. "No," she whispered. "I don't want people looking at me anymore." Courtney gave a satisfied little shrug. Problem solved. She thought she'd won. She thought she'd stolen one little girl's confidence and handed the spotlight to her own daughter. She had no idea that an hour from now, the person with the most important seat in the entire theater wouldn't be watching the dancers. They'd be watching the mothers. Emma refused to let anyone touch her. Not me. Not her dance teacher. Not even the little girls she'd practiced with for months. She simply sat in the corner of the dressing room, holding the severed braid across her lap, like it still belonged to her. Nobody knew what to say. Children kept peeking around the doorway. Adults whispered. Courtney acted bored. Ryan checked his watch. "Can we please stop making this a bigger deal than it is?" I looked at him. Our daughter is falling apart." He shrugged. "Because you're encouraging it." Miss Andrea, the recital director, knelt beside Emma. "Honey, we can pin your hair." Emma slowly shook her head. "I don't want people laughing. No one will laugh." Emma looked toward Courtney. My aunt did. The room became painfully quiet. Even Courtney stopped smiling for a moment. Only for a moment. 5 minutes later, the backstage coordinator rushed into the room. "They're opening the doors." Parents began taking their seats. Children lined up behind the curtain. The recital had to begin in exactly 12 minutes. Miss Andrea looked at Emma, then at me. "If she can't perform, we'll have to change the entire opening." Before I could answer, Courtney spoke first. "My Lily already knows the choreography." The coordinator blinked. "She does?" Courtney smiled proudly. "She's watched Emma practice for months." Ryan nodded immediately. "Seems like the easiest solution." I stared at both of them. They'd discussed this before. I could see it. Neither of them looked surprised. Neither of them hesitated. It wasn't an idea. It was a plan. Lily's eyes suddenly filled with panic. She grabbed her mother's sleeve. "But Mommy, I don't know Emma's part." Courtney squeezed her shoulder. "You'll figure it out." The little girl whispered something so quietly. Only I heard it. "I don't want Emma to cry." My heart broke. The cruelty hadn't come from the children. It never had. Miss Andrea looked completely overwhelmed. "The audience is already seated. We have to decide." I stood up. "I'd like 5 minutes alone with my daughter." Courtney laughed. "What difference will 5 minutes make?" I smiled politely. "You'll see." Inside an empty costume room, they cut away my lucky hair. I gently brushed the short strands behind her ear. "No, they cut your braid." They didn't touch the brave little girl who earned that solo. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. "But everyone will stare." I reached into my bag, not for scissors, not for a wig, not for a hat, for my sketchbook. I always carried one. Inside were dozens of unfinished illustrations: princesses, explorers, astronauts, pirates. One drawing showed a little warrior girl. Her hair wasn't long, half of it had been cut away. Across the page I'd once written a line for a children's book. "Real courage begins the day you stop hiding your scars." Emma read it twice, then looked up at me. "Is she scared?" "Very." "Then why is she smiling?" "Because she decided nobody else gets to choose how her story ends." Emma stared at the picture for a long time. Then, very slowly, she stood up. When we walked back into the hallway, every teacher expected Emma to quit. Instead, she looked at Miss Andrea. "I still want to dance." The director smiled with relief. "We'll pin your hair." Emma shook her head. "No, I want everyone to see it." Courtney actually laughed out loud. "Perfect. Now everyone will notice." Emma answered before I could. "I hope they do." For the first time that afternoon, Courtney's smile flickered just a little. The stage manager announced, "Opening solo in 60 seconds." Children hurried into position. Krentz applauded as the lights dimmed. Courtney leaned toward Ryan and whispered, "Watch, she'll freeze." Ryan nodded confidently. She always gets emotional. Neither of them noticed that Miss Andrea had quietly walked over to the orchestra conductor. She whispered something. The conductor looked toward Emma, then slowly nodded. A minute later, the curtain rose. But the recital didn't begin the way anyone, including Courtney, had rehearsed it. The music never started. Instead, the theater lights stayed dark for 3 long seconds, but Krentz shifted in their seats. Children peeked through the curtains. Even Courtney looked confused. "What's taking so long?" Then a single spotlight appeared, not in the center of the stage, on Emma, standing alone. Miss Andrea quietly walked onto the stage beside her. She wasn't part of the program. She wasn't even supposed to be visible. She took the microphone. "Before we begin," she said softly, "I need everyone to understand something." The audience fell silent. "This afternoon, one of our dancers experienced something deeply unkind. No names, no accusations, just truth," she continued. "I asked this little girl whether she'd like another child to replace her. She said no. I asked if she'd like us to cancel tonight. She said no. I asked if she was frightened." Miss Andrea smiled toward Emma, and she said, "I'm scared. But I still want to dance." Not a single sound came from the audience. Emma slowly stepped forward. She wasn't crying anymore. She wasn't hiding the uneven hair. She wasn't wearing a hat. The jagged haircut was completely visible beneath the stage lights. Miss Andrea knelt beside her. "Would you still like to perform?" Emma nodded. "Yes, but I don't want anyone feeling sorry for me." Miss Andrea smiled. "They won't." The music finally began, not the fast opening everyone expected. A gentle piano, soft, almost weightless. Emma started dancing. Every movement looked different now, not because her choreography had changed. Because every parent in that theater suddenly understood how much courage an 8-year-old was carrying. Halfway through the routine, something unexpected happened. The audience stopped watching her hair. They watched her face. She smiled, a real smile, the kind she'd always had before someone tried to take it away. By the final pose, the theater exploded into applause. Not polite applause, people stood. Teachers cried openly. Even dancers waiting backstage started clapping. Emma looked confused. She whispered, "They're standing." Miss Andrea leaned close. "They're standing for your bravery." Backstage, Courtney's face had turned completely white. This wasn't supposed to happen. Ryan stared silently at the stage. His daughter had just received the loudest applause of the evening, not because she looked perfect, because she refused to let cruelty win. Then it was Lily's turn. The music started. She walked to center stage, stopped, looked into the audience, then turned around. She walked straight back toward the curtain. Courtney hissed, "What are you doing?" Lily pulled her hand away. "I don't want to dance." Courtney's smile disappeared. "You have to." Little Lily shook her head. "No, you said if Emma looked ugly, everyone would finally look at me." The hallway went completely silent. Teachers froze, but parents nearby stopped talking. Lily's tiny voice trembled. "I don't want people looking at me because somebody else is crying." Courtney looked around desperately. "Lily, stop talking." But children don't understand covering for adults. They answer honestly. "You told me, pretty girls always win." "I don't think that's true anymore." Then she walked across the hallway, straight to Emma. Every adult watched. Lily held out something she'd been hiding behind her back. Emma's white satin ribbon, the one tied around the braid Courtney had cut off. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I told Mommy not to do it." Emma looked at her for a long moment, then hugged her. Neither little girl cried, the adults did. Courtney suddenly realized something terrifying. No one was looking at Emma anymore. No one was looking at Lily. Every parent, every dance instructor, every volunteer was looking at her. Not with anger, not with shouting, with disappointment, the kind that never disappears. For the first time in her life, there wasn't a single laugh coming from the crowd, and somehow, that silence hurt far more than any public argument ever could. Nobody asked Courtney to leave. That would have been easy. Instead, the recital continued. Every parent returned to their seat. Every child finished their performance. But something invisible had shifted. Whenever Courtney smiled, nobody smiled back. Whenever she tried making conversation, people politely excused themselves. For someone who had spent years controlling every room she entered, being ignored was unbearable. The Academy hosted its traditional reception. Conti cans, punch, photographs, children running everywhere in glitter-covered costumes. Normally, Courtney was the loudest person in the building. Tonight, parents quietly gathered around Emma instead, not to discuss her haircut. To tell her how brave she'd been, one mother knelt beside her. "My daughter wants to be as courageous as you." Another handed Emma a small bouquet. A little boy from another class shyly offered her his participation medal. "I think you deserve two." Emma laughed for the first time all day. Across the room, Lily stood alone, not because the other children disliked her, because she had quietly chosen not to celebrate. She walked over to Emma carrying the trophy awarded to her class. "I don't want this." Emma looked confused. "You earned it." Lily shook her head. "My mommy wanted me to beat you. I just wanted to dance with my cousin." Emma smiled. "You still can." The two girls walked toward the snack table together, holding hands. Watching them, I realized something important. Children recover surprisingly fast. Adults are the ones who keep wounds alive. Ryan finally approached me. For the first time all evening, he looked uncertain. I think he hesitated. I underestimated what happened. I looked at him quietly. No, you understood perfectly. You just decided it wasn't important. He lowered his eyes. It was a joke, I answered immediately. No, a joke makes everyone laugh. This only made one person happy. He had no response. The Dance Academy announced one final surprise before everyone left. Every year, parents voted privately for a special recognition, not best dancer, not best costume, a small silver star called the Heart of the Stage Award. It honored the child who best represented kindness, courage, and encouragement toward others. No auditions, no judges. Only anonymous parent ballots. Miss Andrea stepped onto the stage carrying the silver star. I've never changed the result of this award. She smiled gently. But tonight, I asked every parent to vote again after everything that happened. She opened the envelope. The Heart of the Stage Award goes to. She paused. Emma Bennett. The theater erupted again. Emma looked completely stunned. I didn't win first place, she whispered. Miss Andrea smiled. This award was never about first place. Then she added something nobody expected. There is a second recipient. Everyone looked around. Lily blinked. What? Miss Andrea continued. For having the courage to tell the truth when it would have been easier to stay silent. Little Lily burst into tears, happy tears. She hugged Emma so tightly the audience laughed softly. Real laughter. Warm laughter. The kind Courtney had tried to steal all afternoon. Parents began leaving one by one. Several stopped beside Courtney. None of them argued, none insulted her. One mother simply said, I won't be leaving my daughter alone with you again. Another quietly removed Courtney from next month's volunteer schedule. Then another. And another. Without speeches, without announcements, word spread naturally, not through gossip, through trust once broken. It simply wasn't offered again. 6 months later, the Academy opened registration for its annual family showcase. Volunteer positions filled within hours. Only one application remained untouched. Courtney's. Nobody rejected it, nobody needed to. The director simply explained, We're choosing volunteers the children feel safest with. Courtney understood exactly what that meant. She never submitted another application. Emma's hair grew back, slowly, unevenly at first, then stronger than before. But every morning before school, she still chose to wear the short side uncovered. One day I asked why. She smiled while tying that same white ribbon around her ponytail. Because if another little girl gets scared, I want her to know she can still be brave. Years later, people forgot the haircut, they forgot the recital, they forgot Courtney, but every new family joining the Academy heard the same story, not about cruelty. About an 8-year-old girl who walked onto a stage exactly as she was, and taught an entire theater that confidence can never be cut away with a pair of scissors.